all your Bucks County staycation needs. So thanks.
Awesome.
Okay.
My apologies.
All right, so we'll get started. Can everybody see and hear me and see the presentation on their screens?
I can.
Can everybody else see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can't see the PowerPoint, just let us know.
I cannot see it.
You can't see it, Tom?
No.
I wonder why.
Oh, now I can. Now
Okay.
I can.
Now you
I
can?
can't see the pictures and the PowerPoint.
Gotcha.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, good morning, everybody, and happy Thursday. And as Amanda said, my name is Helen Amelsberg, and I'm the owner of Vacation Crusaders, which is a travel agency, and it's a franchise of a larger conglomerate called Dream Vacations. And I've actually been traveling and planning travel for at least 30 years, if not more. And I started my very first travel when I was like about 22, and I did around the world in 6 weeks. And after that, that was it. I was hooked on travel, and it's absolutely my passion. I love to travel and go wherever I can, whenever I can. And currently, I've been to 6 continents, over 40 countries. I've only actually ever been on one cruise, and that was last year, and I absolutely loved it. So I was actually due to be on another one earlier this year, and of course, COVID hit, so that didn't happen. So I'll tell you a very, very quick, brief summary about what Vacation Crusaders are and what we do. So we organize travel for anybody. We travel all around the world, so the world is literally our oyster. So we will take you on safari to Kenya. We'll take you on the girls' weekend trip to Napa. If you want to go scuba diving in Bonaire, or you want to go on that round the world trip in 180 days, we can actually take you on that trip. So we give you a personal service. We take care of you from the very beginning, right until you come back home, and even then we will keep in touch with you. And we're there to basically hold your hand the whole time. So we help plan what you're looking for. We help get the best offer, the best service for you. And then while you're even there, we will check in with you to make sure that your vacation is going as planned and that you don't have any issues. And the same goes for you, so that when you are on your trip, you know that you have the peace of mind. If something happens or you have questions, you can call the travel agency and we will help you. And we actually take care of your accommodation as well. Obviously, it's not just your flights, the hotels, your resorts. We will help you with, if you wanted a yacht, to hire a yacht for your trip around the Mediterranean, we can do that for you as well. So basically, in a nutshell, that is what we do at Vacation Crusaders. And as I say, we are a franchise. I bought the franchise from Dream Vacations, and they are one of the largest travel providers. And so they can give us the really best deals, and they give us the support that we need for marketing purposes and for, as I say, getting us the best offers that are out there. So you may be asking, well, why use a travel agent? And I know back in the day, that was the only way you could actually book your travel was via a travel agent. And then, of course, we have the internet, and you can do it yourself now on the internet. With COVID hitting, we are actually predicting that there's going to be about a 40% increase in the use of travel agencies going forward. And the reason for that is most of your travel agents, they're free. They don't charge. So we don't have a charge. So instead of you spending hours and hours and hours on the internet, doing the research, looking at where shall I go, for summer next year, what do you want to do? You're spending all that time looking for the best deal, the best hotel, the best flights. You don't have to do any of that. You talk to the travel agent and they will do that for you. They will present you then with an itinerary, and you can say, yep, looks good. No, it doesn't look good. I want to actually deviate and I want to go here. And they will do all the research and go back and replan it for you. They're also typically the ones that know about the newest resort that's out there, the best deals that are out there, the best cruise ship or tours that are out there. And they do, as I say, they do save you money, because working with somebody like Dream Vacations means that they can actually purchase or bulk buy, if you like, hotel rooms, or they can do bulk cabins on cruises. And they can work with wholesalers for land vacations. So they can give you additional perks that you will not be able to either see or get using the internet. And as I say, their services are free. So that's one of the reasons, or there's actually 10 reasons that we have here on the screen as to why you should use a travel agent, because it will save you a lot of time and it doesn't cost you anything. So what better way of planning your travel? So before I go any further, any questions on what we've talked about so far? Okay. So travel during COVID times. So where do you go? I mean, it's a big question that we all have. Where can you go? You know, what's happening with cruises? Do you already have a cruise booked? What's going to happen to that cruise? Can you fly? You know, what happens during your flight? Where can you fly to? Should you drive? What happens if you're going through security and TSA pre-check? You know, what's happening at hotels? So I can give you a brief overview of what is actually happening during travel right now. So when you do decide that you want to travel, whether it's today or whether it's 6 months time, and whether or not you use a travel agent, these are some basic topics that you need to think about before you travel. So think about the COVID situation where you're going. You know, how many cases have they had? Are they still having an increase in cases, for example? And are there any travel restrictions? Can you actually go to the destination that you're thinking of going to? You know, and if there are travel restrictions, what are they? And are you going to be okay with those travel restrictions? And if you do go there, what is the likelihood that you may contract COVID? And if you do, what's the quarantining? You know, do you have to do 14 days self-quarantining, as you arrive at your destination? Or what happens if you catch COVID while you are there? What happens to your quarantining situation there too? And then you also need to think about your accommodations. If you're in a hotel, are they following the CDC guidelines? If you're going international, what safety protocols do they have in place? And then, of course, there's the culinary options, because if you are thinking of going somewhere, a lot of the restaurants, as we know, are closed. Think of Doylestown, you have to eat outside. If you're going somewhere that's cold, you're not going to be able to eat outside. And what are they going to be doing to ensure that you're going to be doing that social distancing? And then are the attractions open? So for example, I think Glacier National Park, if you want to go there right now, I think it's the eastern entrance, I think, is actually closed. So you can't go through that. The Glacier Park itself is open, but there are parts that are not. If you want to go to Disneyland, for example, yes, it's now open, but there are certain restrictions and certain attractions that you cannot go on. So these are definitely things that you need to be thinking about before you decide to travel. So now you've decided you do want to travel, what's happening with flights? So there's reduced flight options that are out there right now. There's a lot of airlines are still flying, but at a very much a reduced capacity. What they are doing, and it varies by airline, but they are all doing an enhanced cleaning. So they're doing the cleaning of like the seatbelt buckles, the table trays, the overhead compartment handles. So they're fogging the planes. And I think it's American who announced a couple of days ago, they're the first to be using something called an electrostatic system, where they're going to be completely, it's like fogging the plane, but it's at a lot higher level. And then there's also, they've all introduced like a new HEPA air filtration system in the plane. So the air you're breathing in is a lot cleaner than it was before. So as I say, they're sanitizing all of the areas between flights. Now, some of the flights too, when you get on the flight, they're blocking that middle seat so you can have your social distancing. Some flights are not. So American do not. So if you get on an American flight, don't be surprised that it's full, because that middle seat is available and it's open. If you get on a flight such as JetBlue or Southwest, the middle seat is blocked, so you cannot sit there. So I say it all varies by the airline that you take. All of them are, they have a reduced cabin service. So what that means is typically when you get on a flight today, the attendant will be there, the flight attendant will be there at the security door when you, the security door, at the plane door, and they will give you a bag. And in that bag will be a snack or a couple of snacks. There will be a bottle of water, and there will be a mask, and there will be hand sanitizers. And that will be the last you will see of that flight attendant. You go to your seat, you sit in your seat, and that's it. There is no on-flight service anymore on most of the flights. International is slightly different, varies by airline. But for the most part, here in the US, you get on a US flight, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a reduced cabin service. And they do require that you wear your mask the entire flight. You can take it off to drink and eat, but for the rest of the time, you have to keep your mask on. So they are very strict. If you're on a flight and you don't have your mask, they will not allow you on that flight, or they will ask you to leave if you refuse to keep your mask on. Obviously, if you're in flight, they can't do that, but before you fly, they are enforcing that rule. And then also the TSA pre-check and TSA, when you're going through security, it's pretty much the same as what it was before. The only difference is that between you and the TSA officer, there's like a perspex screen, as you can see here on the slide deck. And instead of you handing over your driver's license or your ID to the officer, now they just scan it. And then you show them, you know, your ticket now will be all electronic, and then you just go through TSA pre-check and everything as you did before. Now, throughout the airports, they have temperature screenings. Now, some of them have the handheld scanners or temperature, I forgot what they call them, like a handheld temperature scanner. And then others, if you think of like a standalone ATM machine, you just walk by it and it takes your body temperature as you walk by. And at some airports, before you leave, they are doing personal interviews now, and it's at random. And those interviews are basically to say, have you been to a high case of COVID, where, you know, like I think Arizona is one of them, or was one of them that had high cases. Have you had a cough? You know, have you been feeling unwell, et cetera, et cetera. So they ask you these personal questions. And then a lot of places that you are traveling to now require what they call a travel declaration form. They have different names and they vary by country and where you're going to. And it's basically a form that, again, is asking very similar questions to what the personal interview is. It's about your medical background and seeing if you have COVID, or if you've been in contact with somebody who has had COVID, et cetera, et cetera. And these forms, yeah, they normally have a QR code. So if you can see at the bottom of the slide deck here, this is an example of one from an international airport, and you scan the QR code with your phone, and then it will come up on your phone and you fill it in online. And then you give it to the officer where you're going at the airport there. So flying, yes, you can still fly. Flights are available, but there are protocols in place that you have to abide by. The same, most of it is masks, social distancing, sanitizing, and you may or may not have to fill out the form. Right now, I'm seeing a huge increase in the forms. It's almost like 90% that you have to complete this form. So any questions on flying before we move on?
Helen, have you flown?
Not recently, no. I have not, but I know somebody who has. In fact, I know quite a few people who have, but no, I have not. My travel is all on hold right now, unfortunately. So, but I want to. I was supposed to be in Madrid next week, but that's not happening. So,
You know, Sally here at the chamber has flown, and she pretty much said the same thing. She flew Frontier.
yeah. And how was it, Sally? I don't think we can hear you.
She said that it was great, and that like American, they did have that middle seat occupied, but everybody had to, oh, I see my video is not on. Everybody had to wear a mask, and
they sanitized.
They sanitized thoroughly, and she felt very comfortable.
Yeah, I say, from what I hear, it is pretty safe if you feel comfortable flying. A lot of people don't feel comfortable flying, but there's a lot more people actually starting to fly, and the protocols are there and they're in place to try and keep everybody safe. So if we were going somewhere, then I'd fly, but we're not going anywhere. We should, right? We're travel agents, we should. But thanks for the feedback, Sally. So then if you do fly somewhere, or even if you're just traveling within the US, you know, what about your hotels? What are we doing with hotels? So right now, a lot of the hotels, they have the contactless check-in. So again, it's all your phone. It's not necessarily a QR code, but it's all contactless. You can check in on your phone. So you don't have to sign anything. You still obviously have to go to the check-in desk, but a lot of the check-in desks, they have that Perspex screening so that they're not very close to you. A lot of the hotels, in fact, most of the hotels have regular temperature checks. So not only when you walk in, but around, a lot of them around the hotels, especially in some of the resorts, they have temperature checks all over the place. So you're getting your temperature check that many times, it just becomes like second nature. You don't even notice it's being taken, especially when you have the machines that you walk by. And what they're doing too is they're doing the same as the flights. They're doing an enhanced cleaning. So it's a deep dive cleaning to make sure that all the rooms are sanitized before you get there. And then what they're doing too is they're sealing the room. So once a guest leaves, like so say somebody leaves today, they go in, they clean that room thoroughly, they sanitize it, they fog it. A lot of them use these fog aids, the fogger sanitizing, I don't know what they call them. And they really clean, for example, the high areas that you would touch, such as the phones, the light switches, the remote controls for your TV, etc. So they give them a really deep sanitization. And then what they do is they seal the room. So they close the room and they seal it. And they normally put like a seal, like a sticker on the room to say that when it was last cleaned. And then that room, and depending on your hotel, doesn't get opened until the next guest. And usually they leave. It's either 24 hours or in some cases even 3 days before anyone else is allowed in that room. So there's a time delay before the next guest goes into that room. And there are also, a lot of the hotels are at a very, very reduced guest capacity, some as low as 30%. They are definitely not operating at 100% guest capacity. I think they're between 30 and 70% right now. So that really as well, it keeps you safe. The social distancing, they normally have the markers on the floor to tell you where you can and can't go. And then what they do for room service, and again, it depends on your hotel, but I know, for example, Marriott, there is no room service. So what that means is you don't get fresh towels, you don't get your bed made, you don't get turn down service, and they don't bring food into your room. However, if you want it, you have to request it. But on the whole, they are not doing that. They will bring food if you require food in your room, but they won't bring it into the room. They'll leave it at the door. So you then go and pick it up from outside the door. There are other hotels where they will bring it into your room and they will give you the room service, but they wear masks and gloves and everything else. But for the most part, for the hotels here in the US, there is a reduced room service. And the same as with flights, no mask, no entry, you cannot stay. And typically too, as you're walking around the hotels, you have to wear your mask. In all public areas, masks are required. If you go to the pool, for example, some of them are requiring that you wear a mask. If you're drinking and eating, that's not required. Now, one of the other things you need to think about is if you're going to a hotel is restaurants. A lot of the hotel restaurants, some of them are closed, some of them are open, but they're at reduced capacity. So again, you would then have to maybe make a reservation. So that's one of the things you need to think about too. And this goes for all hotels right now, whether it's here or whether it's international. And then what about cruises? I know they're not sailing, but they actually are. The majority of the cruise lines are not sailing here, but they are sailing in other parts of the world. So for example, MSC is sailing currently in Italy and other places in Europe, but they're allowed to. It's very, what I find, and here's a little side note for you. There's currently 14 cruise ships that are currently anchored off the south coast of England, all in a row. just waiting to be shipped off to Europe or Alaska or around the world. And to me, that's just amazing. I'd love to go and see that. And you can actually do tours. You can pay and do a 2.5-hour tour, but you're in a boat that goes around the boat, so you don't actually get to go on them. But anyway, I sidetracked there. So right now, cruises, obviously there's a huge reduced availability on the cruises because they are basically not sailing, and that goes for river cruises as well. What they are doing is they are currently working on what they are going to be or how they're going to be able to take care of you as the guest once you can sail again. So there's going to be contactless check-in. So at the dockside, it's going to be staggered embarkation times. It's all going to be contactless. So it's via your phone. They're going to be doing regular checks, and that's not just for embarking, but it's for your entire trip on the ship as well. They're also doing the enhanced cleaning. They're doing the fogging, the sanitizations. They're going to be cleaning the public areas on a regular basis, like almost every hour, making sure everything is sanitized. And they're also going to be sailing at a reduced capacity. So not only are there going to be less ships, there's going to be different and less itineraries available, and there's going to be reduced capacity on board those ships. They are not going to be having buffets. Like in the old days, you would have this huge amount of food and buffets. That is no longer going to be the case on the cruise lines. They will have either a served buffet, so they will serve it to you, or it's going to be all restaurants. And they will also have the same policies as the hotels and the airlines, where it's no mask, no entry. Now, what they're also doing, and they're still working on this, but MSC has actually done a pretty good job over in Europe, is there's going to be shore excursions restrictions. And what that means is when you're normally on a cruise, you come to a port, you want to get off, right? You want to go and check it out and see what's going on in the port, and you'll do your own thing, or you'll go on a guided tour, and then you get back on the ship and you go to the next one. Well, of course, because of COVID, if you disembark the ship, they don't know where you're going. They don't know if you're going to be in contact with somebody who may or may not have COVID. So they've created what they call a social bubble. So now you can still disembark off the ship, but you have to be on one of the cruise line's excursions. And the reason for that is because the transportation is approved. They will follow strict safety protocols. The guide that you are using will be following the strict protocols. The areas that you go to, again, will be following all those protocols. So that's what's going to happen in the future. Now, right now, I don't know if anyone's heard, but there was an MSC cruise, I think it was last week in Italy, and they were following this particular rule. And there was a couple who disembarked off the ship, and they had signed up to be on an excursion, and they deviated from the excursion. So they basically broke away from the group and did their own thing. They were not allowed back on board that ship, and they had to forfeit the rest of their trip because they were basically endangering every other passenger on that ship, the crew, and also the tour guides and the transportation. So they were denied to get back on the ship. So as I say, they're very, very strict. They will be sailing again. There's a lot of cruise lines that are just waiting. They're eager to get out there, but they're not going to be sailing. And you probably see it on the TV or in the newspapers or whatever, that they keep suspending their sailings. And that's because they're trying to make sure they have the correct protocols in place to make sure that when you are on that cruise ship, that you are 100% safe. Any questions on cruises? Nope. Okay. So big question, where can we go today? And I will tell you, this changes on a daily basis as to which country and which state you can and cannot go to. So I'm only going to use a few examples. And I put lots of pictures of beaches in here for Amanda because she requested it. So, so right now, what if you want to go to Hawaii? Yes, it's an American state. Yes, you can go, but, and I say there's a big but, there are restrictions to go to Hawaii. 14-day mandatory quarantine. You have to complete the Department of Agriculture form, which is like the travel declaration form. They have the COVID testing. They have screening. If you do not follow the 14-day mandatory quarantine, you can be fined up to $5,000, or in extreme cases, and I don't know what the restrictions would be, it's a year's imprisonment if you don't comply with the mandatory quarantine and with masks and sanitization, et cetera, et cetera. So can you go to Hawaii? Yes. But you might make sure you got a month to go there, because you're going to need 14 days to quarantine. And usually mandatory quarantine, self-quarantine, is at your expense. It's not at the government or the destination that you're going to, or the hotel that you're staying in. Mandatory quarantine you are paying for. So if you can afford to pay for 14 days in a hotel as well as your vacation, then go for it. But you can go to Hawaii, but I say there are restrictions. Where else can you go? Well, the USA, it varies by state. Some have restrictions, some do not. Again, it's like Alaska. You have to pay for a $250 COVID test. You also have to self-quarantine for 14 days, and you have to complete the travel documents. You want to go to California, Florida, Montana, for example, they are open. You can go there today. What about international? Where can you go internationally? Well, not Europe. Right now, Europe is not open to US citizens. However, there are other areas within or surrounding Europe, that's just the UK, you can go to the UK. But again, there's restrictions for going to the UK. So for example, our daughter's going to Oxford, and she's leaving actually next week. Her school doesn't start for another 3 weeks, but she has to do a 14-day mandatory quarantine. So she's already taken the COVID test. She's going to be taking another one. There'll be temperature screenings, etc. But she has to do a 14-day mandatory quarantine. Now we're lucky because the school has the university has dorms that they have assigned specifically for quarantine. So each student will be in a room on their own, and they will be fed every day. Food will be brought to their rooms. So can you go to the UK? Yes, but there is a 14-day mandatory self-quarantine. Now, Mexico, you can go to Mexico, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about Mexico in a minute, but Mexico is open. There is no COVID testing required to go to Mexico. You can go to Mexico tomorrow. They do have, however, very strict safety protocols. And as I say, I'm going to talk more about Mexico in a moment, and I'll tell you what those are. Bermuda is open, but there are restrictions. Now with Bermuda, you have to have a negative COVID test prior to departure. You have to fill out the traveler's forms. You have to pay, I think it's $75 fee. And then when you get to Bermuda, you have to take another COVID test. I think it's 3 days later. And then, as I say, you have to follow the safety protocols, the social distancing, hand sanitization, wearing a mask, etc. So yes, you can go to Bermuda, but there's restrictions. The Caribbean, for example, Curaçao, as you know, Amanda, US Virgin Isles, for example, they're closed. You cannot go there right now. Turks and Caicos, St. Lucia, Barbados, Aruba, they are open. You can go there with restrictions. Usually the restrictions are 14-day self-quarantine, take the COVID test. Some do not have the 14-day quarantine. Some you just have to have the negative COVID test. Jamaica, for example, right now, you can go to Jamaica, but you have to get prior travel approval from the Jamaica government. And I know I have a couple of people that I am aware of that are going to Jamaica, and they're traveling in 2 days and they still don't have their approvals. Some of the approvals are taking quite some time to get, and without that approval, they will not let you in Jamaica. If you want to go to, for example, and I'm slightly deviating from my slide here, if you want to go to Egypt, there's no restrictions. You can go to Egypt tomorrow. That is open. There's no COVID testing. There's no self-quarantining. You can go. Obviously, there's safety protocols, but you can go to Egypt. And as I mentioned, Jamaica. Cambodia is one of the strictest that I've seen. If you want to go to Cambodia, you have to do 14-day self-quarantine. in a government-run quarantine location, and you have to pay for it. You also have to give them a $3,000 deposit to cover any COVID testing that's required. And they want to see an example of you have to have a minimum of $50,000 medical insurance. So they're very, very strict if you want to go to Cambodia, for example. I mean, I could go on, I could talk all day on countries you can go to and places and what is required. So I just wanted to touch on a few examples there. So as I say, I wanted to talk about Mexico. So I have a friend of mine who just came back from Mexico last week, and I asked her to give me a breakdown of the time that she was there, so it would give us a real-time example. So she went there from Colorado, and no COVID test was required. It's a very easy place, as we know, to get to. When she was at the airport in Denver, there were temperature checks, social distancing, and masks, which is what we talked about before with flying. When she arrived in Mexico, they had temperature checks again, and they were doing the social distancing. And then they had the travel form that you had to complete, again, which is like your medical questionnaire. And masks are required at all times. Now, what she did notice is that the moment you arrive in Mexico is there's hand sanitizers like everywhere. And they're constantly fogging the areas, making sure that everybody is clean. They even spray your bags. They even spray the bottom of their shoes. And this was before they got into the transportation that was supplied by the hotel to pick them up and take them back to the hotel. At the hotel, it was the same. They get sprayed on a constant basis with sanitizers. Social distancing, masks are required. The hotel was only at 30% capacity. That was the maximum that they will hold. Right now, they could go to the pool, but there was social distancing between the seats. The restaurants, they were reduced capacity in the restaurants, and you had to pre-book to make sure you could get a table. Everybody wore gloves, or the staff wore gloves. They wore masks. They did have a buffet, but it was a served buffet. So usually when you go to a buffet, you know, you see all the food and you go, oh, I want that, and I want that, and I want that, and I want that. You could not do that in this case. They were there to serve you. You had to stand in line, which was the only drawback. So you had to wait about 20 minutes if you wanted to do the buffet. So you had to stand, you're 6 foot apart. And then when you got to the buffet itself, there was somebody there to serve you. So you had to then tell them what you wanted, and they would give it to you. Now, some of the attractions there as well, such as the pyramids that they have in Mexico, they were closed. So you could not see some of the attractions. Now, the parks, some of them were open, but again, they're only open at like 30% capacity. So you have to check ahead of time as to what you want to see and where you want to go. Now, she did enjoy, she said she actually felt safer being in Mexico than she did being in the US, because everybody followed the protocol, everybody followed the rules. And there was so much sanitization going on that they felt so safe that they never even really, considered being infected by COVID. And also they really enjoyed their time because there was less people, so therefore it was less crowded, so it was more enjoyable. The beaches were quiet, the pool was quiet, so that they really enjoyed their time there. What was surprising is when they came back, so they got back on the flight, went back to their US destination, to Colorado, nothing happened to them at the airport. There were no checks, there was no self-quarantine required. She thinks she remembers walking past one temperature scanner, which was the body scanner, but that was it. There was nothing else there at all. So no self-quarantine is required if you come back from Mexico. Any questions on Mexico? Who wants to go? All right, so let's say you've booked your travel, or you already have travel that's booked. And I'm just keeping my eye on the time, Amanda. What do you do now if you already booked something? Well, if you have travel that's already booked, and you booked it with a travel agent, I would strongly suggest you reach out to your travel agent. And if you didn't, shame on you, you should use a travel agent. Or you reach out to me and I'll help you. Now, let's say you got a flight booked. What happens to your flight? They are not giving refunds. most airlines are not giving you a refund for flights that have already booked. They will, however, give you a future flight credit. Now, depending on the airline, depends on what you get. So for example, I know American, they'll give you a future flight credit, and it's just for the amount of the flight that you already had purchased. I had a group that were going to Barbados, and they actually gave them an additional 25% on top of their airfare. So they've got a lot more, and they're going to be still taking the flights because they changed their flight. They did not cancel their flight. So they actually got a future credit, and they got 25% on top of it. Accommodation. Oh, going back to flights just for a second, I just want to let you know too. Some of the airlines are not charging you a change fee. So typically, if you book a flight today and you now decide you don't want to fly next Sunday, you want to fly the Sunday after, a lot of the airlines would charge you a change fee. Because of COVID, if you currently have a flight today and you now need to change it because where you're going has a high case of COVID, or you don't want to go because of COVID, they are waiving in a lot of cases the change fee. But again, it depends on the airline that you're using. So your accommodation, so your hotels really is no different than what it was before. You know, if you book a hotel, they're pretty flexible. You can either change it to a different date or you cancel your room. Obviously, there's penalties if you cancel within, I think it's 24 hours, and most hotels don't usually charge you. They say they will, but they never do. So your accommodation hasn't really changed. Now, what if you booked a cruise? So the cruises right now obviously are not going anywhere, so you can't go on cruise. So you have two options. You either get a refund or you get a future cruise credit. Now the refund, and again, it depends on your cruise line. The refund could be a full refund of the amount that you paid for your trip, or it could be a refund minus the deposit you paid. So if you paid $50 deposit, you might lose your deposit because it might be a non-refundable deposit, but then you'll get the rest of the money back that you paid for your cruise. However, it will take several months before you get that money back. It is taking, there's still a lot of cruises that were canceled way back in February, March time of this year. People haven't got their money back yet. It's coming. It's just taken them a long time. If you think about a cruise ship, like the largest cruise ship, the Symphony of the Seas on Royal Caribbean, that holds like 6,500 people. And if you think it was sailing every week, and it was going on different itineraries, etc. And then if you multiply that by the amount of ships that were out there that were going all over the world, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people who now need or want to get their money back, or they want to do a future cruise credit. So it's taking a long time for the cruise lines to process those refunds. And because they're not sailing, they furloughed a lot of their employees. So they have reduced staff, but they have a huge and enormous amount of people that they're trying to now process through the system to get them their money back. So it is taking a long time. Now, so you can get your refund from the cruise, or you can take a future cruise credit. And what that means is you will take the same amount of money that you're paying for your cruise today, but instead of sailing, obviously now, you sail next year, or you sail in 2022. You don't have to go next year. It can be in 2 years' time. And a lot of the cruise lines are offering incentives to encourage you to take that future cruise credit, so that they'll offer you an additional, some are offering an additional 25% on top of what you've already paid for that cruise, and offering a lot of perks like onboard credits for excursions, for specialty dining, etc. So there's a lot of offers out there to take that future cruise credit. Now, what if you have a vacation package? So you're going with Apple Vacations or Sandals. So it's a flight, it's a hotel, it's transportation. What happens with that? Well, the only option you have with that really is you can change the date. They're not typically giving you back your money. They are allowing you to change the date. I haven't seen many that are offering any other incentives apart from okay, you can't go today, but you can change the date. Well, actually, I take that back because I just did one for a honeymoon couple I have, and they actually got an extra 2 days in a hotel. So there are some offers out there, but the majority, they are not making any offers for you. They're just telling you can change the date. Now, what if you used your hotel points or your air miles for your flight? Can you get them back? Well, the answer is yes, you can. So it's just like it was before. You cancel your hotel, cancel your flight, you can get your air miles back depending on what your supplier is. Now, if they expire, they're not offering you, right now that I'm aware of, they're not offering you an extra month or 6 months. When they expire, they expire. What they are doing is they're offering an extension on your status. So if you have like an American Airlines frequent flyer status of platinum, and it's due to expire at the end of this year, obviously you can't fly, so you can't keep your status because you don't have enough air miles anymore. What they're doing is they're offering to extend your platinum status to say into next year. So I would check on your hotel points, check on your air miles, because you might be getting emails from them or something, and just make sure that your status has been extended. And then check your travel insurance. And everybody should take out travel insurance. I highly recommend it. Whether it's with the cruise line, whether it's with your airline, whether it's with your own home insurance. But I would check to see what your current travel insurance, what it covers, and whether or not you can make a claim on any changes that you need to make. Or if you've got your travel booked and you feel happy going to, say, if you've booked to go to Mexico, go. It's entirely, if you can still travel to your destination and you feel safe going there, I would say still go. So that's currently what your options are right now with the travel. Does anybody have any questions? I think Amanda does. You're on mute. You have
I know. I
questions?
reduced everything so I could only see you, Helen.
Oh,
So I had to bring
just look
myself
at me.
No, I guess my question is unanswerable, honestly, Helen,
Okay.
because I'm wondering, like, I did have plans to go to Curacao.
Yeah.
And they are letting people back in, but not from the US because of our high
Correct.
numbers of COVID.
Mhm.
And, I'm wondering, when that will change, but I'm thinking that you can't answer that.
No, but I have seen, and I get regular updates on a daily basis, sometimes, 2 or 3 updates in a day. And that I think that right now, I think they're looking at October, but I cannot guarantee that that's going to happen, because obviously it changes by country, by state. I'm trying to think, I think it was the Bahamas that was closed and locked down, and then it opened for a little bit, and then they saw an increase in cases, so then they closed it back down again. So, so it is a fluid situation.
Right. And it's understandable. It's a tiny little country. Do you have any questions, Sally? I'll relay Sally's questions because we're keeping socially distant, so I know she can't be heard.
Well, I was
Okay.
supposed to go on a transatlantic cruise in April. So they talked me into
Did you hear that?
Barely, but she.
Okay, she was supposed to go on a
canceled it,
transatlantic cruise in April. Here, you go.
Hey, Sally.
I was supposed to go on a transatlantic cruise in April.
Yeah.
And when I booked, I took out travel insurance.
Yes.
And of course the cruise was completely paid for. And I was going with my daughter and sister. And what happened was that they talked us into rebooking. Okay. So now we're due to go next April.
Okay.
And my question is, do I have to say something happens and I can't go? Can I use, is that insurance, travel insurance that I bought for, prior to, can I get my money back if we choose not to go?
Okay. So there's a few different scenarios for you there, Sally. So well, first of all, it depends on your travel insurance and what type of travel insurance you have. Now, I'm not an insurance broker. I know a little bit about the travel insurance, but what I can tell you is there's two different types of policies. So depending on the policy you have, there's one called cancel for any reason. And then there's just like your general travel insurance, which covers you for baggage, medical, natural disasters, etc. If you have the cancel for any reason, which you may or may not have, that means you can cancel your trip for any reason at all and get your money back. If you don't have that, then obviously you have to have a covered reason for canceling your trip and getting some of that cash back. However, you also need to check with your cruise line, because there may be penalties for canceling as well. So depending on when you're going what, next April? So I would think you're well within your penalty phase to get 100% refunds back. So because I say what they do is, as it gets closer to the date, that time span for getting your full refund back reduces. So it goes down to like 75%, 50%, 25. So then if you're canceling, and I'll just throw a number out there, but let's say you cancel like a month before, you may not get anything back because you're too close to the departure date. If you're like a year out and you cancel, 9 times out of 10, you probably get 100% of your refund back. And it could be minus the deposit. So if you have like a $50 deposit or a $200 per person deposit, it could be a non-refundable. So that part you might not get back, but the rest you might. So I would check with see what your insurance policy is, see if it's covered, and make sure that the insurance that you took out covers you for next year's travel, that it doesn't expire.
Yeah, that's
check that.
Thinking that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah. So check your travel insurance and check.
I mean, I want to go, but I don't know if it's going to be transatlantic.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right. Well, if it's with Cunard right now, their ships are you thinking, were you going with Cunard?
No, I was going NCL.
Oh, NCL. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what NCL are doing right now for their transatlantic, but I know what Cunard are doing right now. Their ships are being moved around the world to be in different positions for next year. So they are going to be they've stopped their transatlantic now until I think December. I'm not sure about NCL. It's funny enough, I actually have a call with them this afternoon, so I'll find out for you, Sally.
Yeah, okay, good.
But yeah, check your insurance. First of all, check to see if it's still valid. Check to see what kind of policy you have, and then that will help you with your options for canceling, and also check with the cruise line. And if you need any help, call me and I'll help you. I don't charge.
Thank you. I just want to say that we had our airfare already paid to do the cruise too, but we used that airfare to go someplace else. So
okay.
That's how we traveled a few weeks ago. We used that airfare.
Cool.
So I'll have to get airfare again when we go on this cruise.
Right.
I go.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Well, yeah, if you have
turn
any
you
other
back.
questions, yeah, just call me if you need any help, Sally. Okay. Great. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So future travel. So as we know, everybody wants to travel. I want to travel. Amanda wants to travel. Sally wants to travel. Everybody, I think, on this call wants to travel. It will come back. It is already beginning to come back, because we are seeing people beginning to already, as I say, like go to Mexico, especially travel within the US if you don't feel comfortable traveling internationally. Now, bear in mind, when it does come back, and there's not going to be like a date like 1st of January, it's going to be gradual, but the demand is actually going to be high and the supply is going to be limited, which also means that you're going to have availability restricted. So for example, the cruise lines, if you think of like Carnival, they decided to get rid of, well, not get rid of, but to scrap 4 of their ships. They've taken them out of service. A couple of the cruise lines have also decided to cancel or put on hold new ships that they were in the middle of either purchasing or building. Hotels, because they're at reduced capacity, they're some of them are closing. So bear this in mind that, because of the current situation today, some things are closing, some things are going out of business, some things are changing. So as I say, as we get back into some kind of a normal routine, once, we have a vaccine for COVID or whatever the new future looks like, demand for travel is going to be high and the supply will be limited. And because of that, as I say, availability, there may not be, you may want to go on a cruise line and you can't go because there's not enough room on the ship, because the capacity is going to be reduced as well. Remember that. So prices are going to increase a lot. It's going to become very expensive to travel. So I would say start exploring your options today to where you want to go, and you can start planning for it. Start thinking about, if you want to go to Alaska, for example. Alaska is going to be is always a hot destination, and it's going to be a hot destination next year. Book it now. Because today is the best prices you'll ever see. And you don't have to pay for it today. You pay for the deposit. And a lot of the companies that are out there are offering you incentives to book today. So they're offering extremely low deposits, even refundable deposits. And I think it's the, who is it? Palladium Hotels, which is a Blue Diamond group. They're offering free COVID insurance if you book with them. Others are offering you additional nights. So there's a lot of different perks, different offers out there. You don't have to pay it today, and you don't have to travel today, but you could explore your options, look into, where you want to go, when you would potentially want to go, whether it's next year or the year after, and book it today. So then you get it at today's price. And you're not going to be in a situation that next year you decide you want to go, and either it's double or triple the price, or you can't go on the trip because it's not available, because it's already fully booked. And I say that the top destinations that the travel industry are predicting for next year are like the US destinations. A lot of people are traveling internally right now because it's easy to do. And like Amanda, you were saying, it's we're all exploring locally, right? We're going around Bucks County, for example, or you're going into the parks around here, and it's beautiful. We've got everything on our doorstep, and we don't take any advantage of it. So the national parks and the US destinations are going to be very, 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 very popular next year. Hawaii, because right now it's closed and everybody wants to go to Hawaii. Alaska, because Alaska is closed. You can fly to Alaska right now, but you can't go there on the cruise ships, which is what one of the biggest hotspots was is every year. And Europe, because you can't go to Europe, and everybody wants to go to Europe. They want to go to Italy. They want to go to France to do wine tasting. The Caribbean and Mexico are always hot destinations and will be again next year. And then the South Pacific is going to be a hot destination because they've not been touched that harshly with COVID. So, and people want to go, they want to travel there. It's on your bucket list, and people are saying, I want to take that bucket list item and I want to do it now. So these are the top destinations that the travel industry are currently predicting for 2021. And that's it. I'm done. So thank you all very much. And thank you, Amanda, for allowing me to come and talk today. So I'm open for questions, or please take my information here. Visit my website that we have. It's got a ton of information on there. It's got videos on there. And if you have questions, email me or call me or reach out to Amanda if you don't have my details, and Amanda will forward on any questions you have. But I'm happy to help you with your travel. As I say, I don't charge. So if you like Sally, if she needs help, I'm more than happy to help out Sally.
That's
so
great.
Here for you all. And we will travel again, all of us. Amanda, any other questions from anybody?
Lisa, do you want to share any good spots that we should? Tom, did you have a question?
No, I don't. Actually, I
Okay.
gotta run. Thanks very much.
Okay.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you, Tom. And this is also being recorded. So for those who didn't, who weren't in attendance, you know, they'll get to see it. So that being said, Lisa, do you want to share some spots in Bucks County real quickly with us that we could get
Sure.
on?
So COVID's been interesting for the team at Visit Bucks. It's our job to promote the county for people to come here to visit. So that's been a little challenging, but things are starting to open up. Our partners are following guidelines. It's a safe place to visit. And like Helen mentioned, it's just so before you travel anywhere within the county, we encourage you to check their website, check our website, or give them a call beforehand. Hours have changed and guidelines have changed. But with that being said, thankfully, there's a lot of outdoor recreation here in the county. And we have some really awesome walkable towns. And it looks like we lost all of our people. So Helen, if you're looking to get out and about in the county, there's plenty of things to do. Our parks, Nakamixon, Doylestown has the Paint D-Town display right now with the Mercer, tubing, camping, and we also have some lodging properties that are offering some really great deals right now. So if you've been wanting to try one of our fancier B&Bs, now might be the time to do it because the prices are right and you don't have to make yourself breakfast.
Perfect. And that's great because what we're going to do is, if Helen lets us, we'll upload this to YouTube and post it on our website so that everybody can see. So I know that they can go on vacationcrusaders.com. If they want to find out about things in Bucks County, it's visitbuckscounty.com.
Yep, that's
Right.
it.
So thank you guys for coming. Helen, thank you so much.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it. And have a
Thank
great
you.
day, everyone.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Kelly. Bye, Lisa. Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.